to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest, data grad students, and of course, a fellow podcaster. Corporate culture meets career hacks. No other than Miss Katie Stubbs.
Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Welcome. Yes, welcome,
really.
welcome, Miss Katie. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of started on this podcasting journey in June, but I guess like more specifically about my educational backgrounds. I started college a few years ago and just recently graduated my bachelor's in finance and neuroscience. And now I'm getting my master's at the same university, WashU, in data analytics and statistics. So I can kind of talk about my journey through that as well. But yeah, through the course of my college experience, I've had over 10 internships, and I've realized there's a lot more to corporate life that people don't know about. And I actually started by giving tips and presentations to my sorority on how to use LinkedIn, how to apply for jobs. And yeah, my friend and I just decided to make it a podcast at that point. So that's,
Yes, congratulations. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
thank you.
And tell us, Miss Katie, beyond just having a podcast, what is the single most important strategic goal a podcaster should define before they even record episode one?
Yeah, I think for us, that was really just our audience and, who we were trying to attract. Obviously, I think there's a lot of podcasts available about careers in corporate for more of the older generation where everything's a lot more serious. And I think that's just kind of the media they really like. I think Gen Z is a little bit more about transparency and honesty, just like yeah, just no BS kind of thing. And so that was who we were really targeting here. And I think that's the most important thing for any podcaster to really nail down before recording.
In a crowded market, how does a new podcaster find a niche or angle that is both authentic to them and is a real, reachable audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all just starts from having a passion about something. I think, recently I feel like talking to a lot of my friends, everyone is passionate about something, and I think I've realized that, I just have a lot of different passions, and why not just start to try to do something with it? I've always just valued transparency and just corporate life and helping people with their lives and improving their lives. And so I guess if that answers your question, that's kind of just starting with that passion is how you enter a crowded market. And I think people do see that. I think that does kind of read through in a lot of our content, and that's why people like it. So
Yes, if you have the passion to be a podcast host, please do so and stop procrastinating. And Miss Katie, how has the role of a podcast evolved from a pure entertainment to a core pillar of content marketing and personal branding?
yeah, so that's something else I was, obviously considering when I started, when we both started. But I think beyond the podcast, I think it's important for creators to have an identity. Like for a lot of people, podcasting is not what they do full time, right? Like I think in your case, it is, and that's amazing. But I think when people first start out, they usually have a full time job or they do have something else that's going on, and yeah, I think that just really starting and leaning into that is just super important. And like you said, just stop procrastinating and just start. And I think that's something that, yeah, I really wanted to do.
Miss Katie, on content and production, what is the most common mistake you hear in a podcast audio quality that instantly signals amateur hour and how it can be easily fixed?
Yeah, honestly, from what I've seen, I think our quality was not so great at first, to be honest. And I think that's, we learned from it and just were able to keep hearing ourselves, like playing it back, seeing like, what the issues are. And I think, obviously we needed to invest in a good mic. I think that's the first thing. You're going to need an editing platform. And, we decided on Riverside, which I think you also decided on. And I think those are the main sounds for quality, but I think also quality, I guess, goes beyond just production like sounds. I think it's also important to talk about quality in terms of the content. And I think that almost matters more to people. I think I've listened to some podcasts, the quality in the audio isn't really there, but honestly, the content just makes up for that. So I think that's a really important note as well.
Yes, definitely. Beyond good audio, what are the elements of compelling podcasts into the hooks a listener in a critical first 60 seconds?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For ours, we did just kind of a synopsis of what we talked about throughout the show. So sometimes we don't know right away what we're going to talk about. Sometimes we do have an idea, but sometimes it just, we start recording and we just talk and then we realize we're on a completely different subject than what we were on initially. But I think that again, like speaks to that passion and just energy of just, what we feel like talking about. That's what we do. And so then I think going back instead of doing, the initial pre-intro, like right before you record, I think it's important to do it after because sometimes you don't always know like the best thing that's going to be in your episode until after you recorded it. So I think that's a trick we've used is not to do the intro first, but to do that as a last step.
Last step indeed. And how do you structure the flow of an episode to maintain engagement and provide value, whether it's a 20-minute, a solid cast, or a 90-minute interview?
Yeah, I think we've been really trying to hit around the 25 to 40-minute mark, and that's worked really well for us. But I think in terms of just segmenting it up, we kind of keep ourselves to one topic at a time. Sometimes we'll share from our personal experiences in the beginning, and just kind of like our life updates on like what happened to us at work or whatever. And then we'll kind of move into the main content we wanted to discuss for that episode. So I think that's another way we segment it. But like I said, we kind of do have this stream of consciousness as well, where we just talk. And I think that's where the editing comes in. If it seems like we haven't really blocked like different segments of things to talk about, then we go back and edit it and make those, structures really clear so the audience can follow our conversation more easily.
What's your philosophy on interview style versus solo shows?
We started with both of us. So that's something I also really wanted. I was worried if I just talked by myself, people wouldn't really listen, people wouldn't be interested, especially about corporate. I think people are a little hesitant to see like, oh, it's another corporate podcast because I've seen so many of those and they're just kind of boring, I guess. Not all of them, but some of them can be. And I think we just wanted to do it for just us because we felt like we kind of have a fun take on it. It's also hard to find really developed professionals, I think, in our field who are the same age because, right, we do want to keep that Gen Z audience, as we said before. So I think that's been a little bit difficult, but I think in the future, we are looking to maybe move into more startups and, just 22 to 25-year-olds who started a startup and what they have to say about why they didn't choose to take the normal corporate route and just expand to something else. I think that's something we're looking at as well.
What are the unique advantages and challenges of each format, Miss Katie?
Do you
Being an
mean
being solo and with having an interview.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think being solo is harder to have TikToks and reels and stuff. And so that's what we use a lot. It's honestly a great engagement pool for us to post YouTube shorts, TikToks, and Instagram reels, as you can see from our Instagram page. But I think it is harder to have that if you're just talking to a camera alone. I think with another person there, they can react, they can say things back, and it's just a little bit more engaging. Or like we can have differing opinions, and then we can say in the comments like, who do you side with, Katie or Claire? And then it kind of adds like a little bit more to it than just one person sharing their sole opinion. It kind of has a little bit more complexity and intrigue to it. So I think that's really been helping us with those reels.
Indeed. So, what is the most underutilized yet highly effective strategy for growing a loyal podcast audience from zero?
Yeah, I think for us, it was just really connecting with people, being honest and being upfront, being transparent. Like I said, those are kind of our core pillars at this point. Um, I think a lot of podcasters try to make sure every episode is perfect and all the language is perfect and they don't say like or too much. And then we just kind of gave up on that. We're like, you know what? This is our personality. This is what we're going to present ourselves as. And, I just like cutting out the formalities, to be honest. We just want to talk about real stuff, real opinions. Like we don't want to always have to pretend we like a certain like event or event style or something at work if we don't. Like we want to be real and truthful to our members, and we want them to have that like truthful connection back with us that they might not be able to say at their job, or they might be like, oh yeah, I also had a frustrating boss I had to deal with. Like I know I can come here and talk about that to you all. And so I think that's kind of how we build that community and how we're continuing to build that community.
Yes, people, be authentic and be you who you are. Be, the more people love you when you are not pretending. Be
Yeah.
yourself. How should a podcaster think about repurposing the audio content across other platforms like YouTube clips, social media, coach blog posts to maximize reach?
Yeah. So for our reach, like I said, we started on just Spodcast and YouTube, and that was great for us. I think Spotify is obviously our leader right now in terms of watches, but I think, having a really solid Instagram, especially when catering to Gen Z, and like millennials, that really helps as well. I think our TikTok is something we've invested heavily in. YouTube Shorts as well have gotten some pull. And I think, well, recently we just expanded to Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio and some others. So, Amazon Music. And yeah, I think, start with one or two, and then as you are able, scale. And then I think the most important thing though is getting on social media, because even if people just see your face for like 5 seconds, that helps them kind of like prime you, like when they see you again, and just be like, oh, this is familiar. It's not new. It's a familiar face. It's a familiar person I've heard something from before. And it kind of just makes them more open to receiving what you have to say.
What is the real value of podcasting directories and charts? Are they vanity metric or are they genuinely drive discovery?
Podcasts, do you mean like, what do you mean specifically about a vanity metric?
Like, well, for are you checking your Apple chart when you are in the top 10 or whatever? Which are you inclining to be well number one on the Apple chart?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that as like anything, right? Like, I mean, in sports, people still compete, right? I mean, that's kind of like the point. In work, you still compete with coworkers at times, especially in, some of the more lucrative fields. Like consulting is kind of that upper out mentality. So I think any job you are going to do, you're kind of might be in a more competitive environment, and you are going to have to think about competing with other people. I think in terms of competition, that's not even something I think we've thought about at this point, because I think we have such a different value proposition than some other podcasts out there. I tried to look for guests to come on and who have a corporate podcast that was just really truthful and genuine, and I honestly could not find many. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now, is we're not even like comparing ourselves to others, and it's definitely not a vanity metric for us. I think it's just about building a community. And if another podcast is doing great, we'd love to partner with them, like that's kind of where our mentality is at this point.
For a podcaster with a small but dedicated audience, what is the first step to converting listeners into a true community?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we have like memes on our page, on our like Instagram page, just again, relatable and authentic content. I think past that, we kind of came up with some like terms that we have, like um, Claire was talking about my outfit one day and how I have like a change of clothes and in my car at all times, and she was like saying I didn't need that and to just get like a Tide stick if I spill something on myself throughout the workday. And so we kind of made this term corporate bully because Claire just likes to, kind of say stuff about my outfits and whatever. And so I think it's just, having fun with it, having cool terms, having your own slang, having your own merchandise. We just dropped t-shirts and stuff like that. So just, really just being creative in all facets of life and not just exclusively the podcast, but maybe like we were talking about making a Teams channel or a Slack channel for people when they're at work, because apparently if your company doesn't have it restricted, you can join like team channels across different networks. So yeah, we're just trying anything and really trying to just connect with our audience, like you said, and I think do things that they would find interesting as well. So
Yes, definitely. And Miss Katie, as data grad students and a podcast host, what are your short term and long term goals?
yeah, so I think for short term, I'm definitely just invested in, the podcast, and I think things that I want to do right now. I think obviously I'm finishing my master's degree and is on track to finish it in December. So, I'm kind of at the home stretch, but I think I realized that there are other things I want to do before just jumping into corporate life. And so I actually pushed back one of my timelines. I'm supposed to start full time, or I had the option to start in February. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start in August. I want just some time to figure out if if this podcast can grow, or if I'm going to invest in myself or create a business. Like, I don't know what opportunities are all going to be available to me. And I don't want to just silo myself into one thing. I want to explore a lot of options. And so I think that's something I've done, at least like, I don't know, kind of answering that both short term and long term, is that's something I'm looking for, just new opportunities. And I want to take advantage of things before, I start something and really commit. So yeah, that's kind of an answer. I
Good
don't know.
luck. Good luck to your goals
Thank
and looking
you.
forward for more success, Miss Katie. And what will be your advice for those people out there want to be a podcast host too?
Yeah, I think you should do it. I know everyone says the market is so oversaturated. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because you could say that the market's oversaturated, okay. But people are watching movies less, people are watching TV less. Like, there's other content that people are switching to, whether that's TikTok, whether that's a Reddit feed, whether that's YouTube shorts, whether that's YouTube videos. Like, and just because it's competitive shouldn't stop you from doing what you actually want to do. Like I said, that passion is the most important thing, regardless of anything else. I think even if I talked about this actually with a person at my old company, but they said that, a lot of these big businesses, especially, podcast media, they're dying on the inside because they don't have the passion that they used to once have. Like, you need to keep passionate people. You need people who actually care about what they're doing. And I think when you have that, regardless of size, you're going to end up doing well. And I think it's just committing and sticking through that. So that's kind of the mentality I'm going into this with. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes out of it.
Thank you for that advice, Miss Katie. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yes. So I actually kind of have two books. And so my first book is Freakonomics by Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner, which I've also listened to the Freakonomics podcast, which is really interesting as well. I really loved Freakonomics because I think, again, just talking about passion, I think school sometimes gets to be, okay, I just have to learn this stuff just to learn it. And then people never use it again. And so one of my teachers in high school, he made an intro to econ class and he fashioned it after this book, Freakonomics. And after that class, I thought economics was the coolest thing. Like that's what made me want to go into business because I was like, you know what? It doesn't always have to be just numbers or just stats tables or just, supply demand stuff. It can be actually really interesting things. Like we can talk about daycares and, incentives, and we can talk about like pricing and how to, like, I don't know. There's just so many really interesting things that I think can come out of that, like baby names predicting socioeconomic status, just things I would have never thought to think about, which is really cool. And then another book I really like is Everybody Lies. And I love Everybody Lies. That's another book that I'm really passionate about. It's by Seth Steven Davidowitz. And I actually had a call with him a few years back because I don't know, I was just really passionate about it. And I just DM'd him on like LinkedIn and I was like, hey, I'd love to talk about your book. Like, I think it's really cool that you put out this huge, like, really just thoughtful piece of, data literature almost, but just made it really interesting. And that's why I also wanted to get into data because I was like, you know what, this can be way cooler than any stats professor can ever tell me it is. Like, I can actually do real world stuff with this. That's interesting. And so both of those people really made me passionate about these two kind of different subjects and made me want to learn more. And so, again, going back to that passion, that's kind of why I really recommend those books strongly.
Thank you for that recommended books, Miss Katie. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101 and mental health 101. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its fifth season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Katie, finally, if someone who is passionate and has a message but feels intimidated by the technical side, what is your message to them to just started?
Yeah, I think with anything, just try. Especially for the technical part of anything, I'm not, I wouldn't even say I was a huge technical person like 3 years ago. Like, sure, I did finance and sure, I did math and sure, I know how to use technology somewhat. But when I started this master's in data analytics and stats too, like, you would think I'm really stats heavy. You would think I'm really invested in math. I actually didn't have a lot of prereqs done. I just started and I was like, you know what? This is what I think I want to do, and I'm willing to work hard to do it. And so I think just regardless of any background, it doesn't matter if you feel like you don't have the right background, if you don't have the right experience, you'll learn. Anyone can learn anything. And so I think that's the most important mentality to have, is that if you don't know it, you'll learn it, and that's okay. And we're all just learning at the same time as each other. So yeah, I wouldn't be worried about not having what you think is the right expertise or anything like that.
Miss Katie Stubbs, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, one of the projects I'm working on in school is practicum, and so we're doing a machine learning model trying to transform MRI images. So that's something I'm doing on the side. And entering an entrepreneurship competition, teaching a data analytics class on SQL, doing the podcast, finishing my master's. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm up to.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Katie Stubbs on her journey to podcasting, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering episode of the podcast itself, or episodes. So, Miss Katie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate you letting me be here.
More to come, people. See you soon.